Hello and welcome back to another exciting episode of the Apatic Webcast. I'm your host, Mike Amante, and this is the first episode of the 2014-15 school year. It has been a busy one with lots of ups and downs, but today hopefully is going to end on an up. I'm excited this afternoon to have my good friend and ADE colleague, true rock star of broadcast journalism, Don Goble from St. Louis, Missouri is our guest this month, who's going to be talking to us about mobile journalism. And to do so, he's put together a great new free course on iTunes U around that topic. And without further ado, Don, I'm going to turn it over to you to share what you have going on and what you're up to and what great things you have for all of our Apatic listeners out there.
Well, thank you, Mike, very much for having me. I'm honored to be here to talk about video, talk about journalism, and talk about how journalism has been really democratized. With the advent of iOS devices and tablets and smartphones that people have, they're everywhere. And the reality is everyone is a journalist. I was brought into this job about 10 years ago to teach the future broadcasters of the world or filmmakers how to use broadcast cameras and editing systems and lighting kits, and I still do that. But what I've found over the last decade is that with iOS devices now being able to record video, there's a real opportunity to teach any person, any student, proper ways to use that device, because the reality is we're finding citizen journalists in the field every day. Any breaking news story, you're seeing people taking out their phones and taking pictures and shooting video and sending it to YouTube, sending it to CNN's iReport. And so what I wanted to do with this mobile journalism course is, yes, it's tailored towards students who are interested in the journalism environment, but really tailored towards any student who would like to use their iPad or any iOS device to put together a news package, a short one, in the same manner that the professionals do. And we don't need big, heavy production equipment anymore, and we don't even need all the accessories. There are accessories out there for the iPad and devices. There are tripods and microphones. But what I wanted to do was to identify a process that anybody could just simply use their device and to create a story, a visual story. Much like I start a lot of my projects, I went ahead and did it myself. Now, I teach broadcast film production. I'm a heavy broadcast film producer myself, and so in order for me to ask my students or anybody else to do this kind of project, I felt like I should do it myself. And so I got started with that over the summer, created some ideas, and along came a course. And so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you now so that we can begin to take a look at the material that I have put together. And hopefully you can see that. Everything look okay there?
We are seeing a web browser there. It looks like a Google Plus page.
Okay, well, we don't want that right now. We would like to see. Here we go. Are you seeing a keynote slide right now?
It's catching up.
Okay. The first slide you should see is when the Pope was doing a visit back in 2005, and there's a whole crowd of people. Is that still not coming up?
Still not coming up.
Okay. Well, let's stop sharing, and we'll start it again. That looks like it might have it.
That's it.
All right. So on the top back in 2005, you see a whole crowd of people waiting to hear from the Pope.
Oh, now it's black. Hold on.
Okay.
Are you sharing the window or are you sharing the desktop?
I'm sharing the desktop.
All right, try it again.
Okay. Are you still seeing black?
Now I'm seeing the keynote. We're seeing the keynote interface.
But you're not seeing it launched. Interesting.
Stop again. Let's try it one more time.
All right.
We do love hangouts, but this happens on occasion. Some more than others. Let's see how we do here.
Wow. What's going on there?
Hopefully, yes, success. That was a good thing.
Got it.
Now we're golden. We
Okay.
are good to go, Don.
So here we go. Thanks for hanging in there with me, Mike.
Hey, you bet.
On the top there, as I was mentioning, there's a whole crowd waiting for the Pope to speak back in 2005. If you look really closely, there's a guy in the lower right-hand corner who has some kind of flip phone that's out. And now, 8 years later, look at the sea of devices, of people holding them up, looking to capture the Pope at a later time, getting ready to speak. Nearly every set of hands that you see is trying to record was about to happen. And that really is the essence of our culture right now. So I felt that there would be a really good opportunity to kind of build upon that visual storytelling that we're all experiencing with these devices. And here's a great video to kind of launch that.
Is this thing even on?
Yeah, that means it's recording.
We all love stories. We're born for them. They can't be artificially evoked. It doesn't always mean plot or fact.
Take 48,327.
They aren't an actual exact science. That's what's so special about stories. They're not predictable. It's capturing a truth from your experience. It can cross the barriers of time, real and imagined, expressing values you personally feel deep down to your core.
I think that video clearly states really kind of what the essence of my project was here with this mobile journalism news package. So created with the iTunes U course, and this is free for anyone who would like to enroll, and I know you'll link out to it on your site, Mike. Basically, it will allow a student or an individual over the course of about 2 weeks to kind of identify what mobile journalism is and really kind of identify ways they can become a citizen journalist. The reality is we are getting our news from smartphones and mobile devices more and more every single day and every single year. The traditional 5 o'clock newscast on TV and the newspaper to our front step has really morphed into constantly checking our devices. And so not only then are we consuming information from these devices, but more often than not, our students and individuals are creating news or trying to capture news to send out to other places, to YouTube or anywhere else online. So what I'd like to do is teach people maybe the correct way or some proper ways to put together a news package. There's the overview, and we can move down a little bit more about myself as the instructor, and students then could email me questions along the way. A brief outline of the news package gets into introducing the topic, building an understanding not only of what mobile journalism is, but all the steps that will be involved into creating our story, our visual story. And then we kind of get into a little bit more about introducing the topic, building that understanding, becoming citizen journalists, because we all have the journalism, the journalist inside of us, and maybe understanding some techniques and some language that we can wrap around that to, again, democratize the news media cycle. And then, of course, the only way to truly do that is not only through consumption, but through creation. And we'll do that in our applying learning segment, where students will really get into the 3 phases of creating a video: pre-planning, the production process, and the post-production process. So let's get into that pre-production process that we really need to, and any good video, its design in that pre-production process is where we will decide that video will be successful. The only way to do that is through some research. So in the course, we'll have our students research really what mobile journalism is and what is a citizen journalist. We can link out to a site there where your students can find out a little bit more about what it means to be a citizen journalist. It's more than just taking out the device and holding it vertically and hitting record, shaking the camera around, trying to capture some kind of breaking news, and then posting it to YouTube for all your friends to see. I think we have a responsibility, if we are going to use that device for recording purposes, that if we understand the potential impact, becoming a citizen journalist might take on some new meanings. And that's really where some media literacy principles will be built into this, really critically understanding not only the messages that we're receiving from the media every day, but the types of messages that we are ultimately creating when we use these devices, whether it be for journalism or whether it be on social media or any other digital device. Once we kind of get past that research, we want to brainstorm some topics. We want to identify who we might talk to, how this might fit into our classroom. And the one thing I'm really excited about this project for is that it could be tailored to the journalist, but it could be tailored to any specific classroom and any subject matter when there may be an expert involved that you could talk to. Maybe there's a U.S. history class that's studying the civil rights movement, and you could find a local expert or local person who would be your expert, who lived through the civil rights movement and could talk to you on camera about what their experiences were. You might be in a science class studying anatomy, and you could find a local anthropologist, maybe at a university, maybe within your own building, and a teacher who could talk to you a little bit more about what that means for the subject matter that you're studying. So in this brainstorming the topic and story ideas, we want to identify who are the experts. Heck, it could even be maybe there's a student in your school who is a phenomenal artist. Well, they're the expert of their own art, and you could talk to that student about what it takes to prepare for that art. Or maybe there's a musician who practices every day. So an expert doesn't have to necessarily be someone of such high credibility and resource and authority. It really could be the student sitting next to you that could be an expert in anything that they currently are doing. So we'll identify a little bit of that, and we'll open up one of our first apps, and that'll be Google Docs, where we can kind of reflect upon that. We move into visual storytelling, and to tell a visual story is just like any other story. It has a solid beginning, it has a fabulous middle, and it has that huge conclusion. So where we want to introduce the environment to our story in the beginning, we introduce characters and a rising conflict in the middle, and we summarize, conclude, or we provide some resolution in the end of that story. And we're just telling it in different forms. So rather than in the written word that we're used to maybe with creating essays or short stories, we're going to do this with a video. So I offered a broadcast story structure lesson in there, at least a slide deck, that will talk basically about the basics of a good video. And so students will have a chance to go through those lessons and have an idea and a little more background of what's important. We also want to talk a little bit more about the essence of shooting, some shooting tips. So we discuss about B-roll, and what is B-roll? Well, we're ultimately going to interview an expert. So we would talk to them or consider them our primary source. That would be maybe our A-roll. We don't really say A-roll, but we do use the term B-roll, which is secondary footage, supporting video footage to support what our interview expert is saying. So whatever they say, we want to show that. And through doing that illustration of the words, we really want to talk about some different cinematography options by holding the camera at a wide angle, by zooming in our feet a little bit more and getting to more of a medium shot, to really getting tight to show a lot of detail and to do a close-up of what's happening. So I offered some B-roll and different videos there that you can discuss. And one of the really solid, I'm going to get in a couple different solid examples in there and resources here in just a little bit. Once we kind of talk a little bit about some of the video footage that we're interested in, we need to talk about interviewing. And now a lot of people will assume interviewing is a question and an answer. I'm the reporter, I'm the person, I'm the student. I'm going to ask you a question, and then you're going to give me an answer. The problem with that form of interviewing, in my opinion, when it comes to telling visual stories, is that people will ultimately try to explain or tell you a story that they think you're looking for a certain answer. And it might not be as authentic and genuine. So what I like to teach my students is to have more of a conversation. And tell me about that situation. Tell me about what you do. Tell me about what your day is like. Tell me about what it was like to live during the civil rights movement. And now when the person gives an answer, they're really giving a story. They're giving an explanation. And so one thing we can do is we can practice that. We can open up the iMovie app on our iPads and actually record the video footage within the app and just practice shooting some wide, medium, and tight shots, just finding a subject, an object, a person. It doesn't really matter. And try it out. Now, one of the things I mentioned earlier is that we're going to go ahead and use these iPads without any accessories. So that means no tripod and no microphone. that will force us to do a few things. If you notice that my student here is holding the iPad very sturdy with both hands in the lower right and left corners, supporting with her thumb and her fingertips mostly. And what we found is the more your hand or your body is holding a camera, the shakier it'll be. She's also kind of using her arms as a tripod, and she's very close to the subject. You'll notice he's really only about a foot or two away. That's to capture good sound since we don't have a microphone. She also has him in a room that doesn't have a lot of noise going on so that it won't interrupt or distract from what he's saying. And so then once we figure out some ways that we know we want to hold the iPad, we have some conversation starters. Another great example or assignment would be to really get in and do some practice interviewing. Just pick a partner in class and ask them a few questions and try and compose the shot and see how close you need to get. As I mentioned earlier, there's some phenomenal resources on here. One of them I'm really happy about is the PBS NewsHour. Their Student Reporting Labs has offered us permission to use a whole series of video tutorials that were created by a high school teacher for high school students in how to use equipment, whether it be mobile devices or actual broadcast equipment. These same lessons apply. And so this is a phenomenal resource that our students can leverage throughout the course. And so that would get us through the interviewing process and lead us into actually recording the footage, recording our interview, recording some B-roll, and we're going to go ahead and do that. If you open up the iMovie app in the lower right-hand corner, when you start a new project, you see the little photo icon, and that's what you're going to go ahead and tap, and you'll hit your record button, and everything will record right within the app. Now, you could use the video camera option on your iPad or your iOS device, and you could easily access that footage in your camera roll. I've just found it's much easier to stay organized by recording the footage for these particular projects directly into the app. Once we've recorded all of our footage, we, of course, now have to edit it. And one of the things that I decided I wanted to put myself through is I'm used to editing on these big, sophisticated softwares. Well, iMovie within the iMovie app within iPad is really so easy to use. And in fact, I found a video that I offered in there, editing in iMovie on iPad. It's about a 13 to 14-minute video. That's all that I watched as my tutorial to take myself through the process of creating the video that you're going to see here shortly. And it's a great process. And so the footage then that you've taken as far as wide, medium, and tight, we've captured maybe some sound. We want to look at sound. We've practiced some interviewing. That's all great practice footage now that you can edit within iMovie before you're actually doing the project that will count for something. And so you're kind of really getting comfortable with all the different functions. Of course, after you've edited one of the most powerful things that you can do is publish that video. It really, I've seen students more motivated and accountable to create a project that will go well beyond the four walls within their classroom. And one of the great things about the iMovie app is that you can easily publish your video then out of the app directly to YouTube and Vimeo. Now, we'll talk about those apps a little bit more later here before we sign off, but those are also phenomenal apps to find and search for extra tutorials, extra explanations on how to use this device for filming, for editing, for capturing sound. In fact, Vimeo has a video film school that you could go onto and has just fabulous, easy, short tutorials your students could watch at home. Once we've gotten through all of our practice and building that understanding, now it's time to really apply that learning. And so I've developed a project that's called Interview an Expert, producing a mobile journalism news package on your iPad. So I've offered an example video we're going to watch here at the end of this session. But before we get into that, as I mentioned earlier, one of the main cogs of producing a successful video will be in that pre-planning. And so I've offered a package planning sheet. This is really kind of get your thoughts down on paper. Whether you're going to do a project individually or whether you're going to do this collaboratively with some other students. You have Google Docs earlier that you could have shared to create some ideas, and you could have multiple students working on this project. Or in some cases, in one-to-one scenarios, which we have here at our school, each student can be responsible for their own project. And so this forces the student to really get their thoughts and their ideas down on paper, in this case on the iPad first. What is the topic? What will be my main story points? Doing some research. One of the things that I'm really also excited about, and now I'm not an artist, And if you looked at some of my storyboarding that you'll see in the course and a blog post that I included, I use stick figures. To this day, I still use stick figures. And an app that I found that fits perfectly for my style there is Paper by 53. And if you see in the iPad up there, it's basically you can just use a stylus or your finger to sketch out a storyboard. You can really sketch out the shots ahead of time before you would go out on location. Those shots could totally change, but what I have found is that if a student can visualize in their mind and put it down in some form what a wide shot might look like, what a medium shot might look like, and what that close-up and what they may want to close up on can really help them once they get out on site. And this is a terrific app. You can use different colors and shapes. You can get as sophisticated as you like. Once we've really planned our project, we're ready to jump into it now and create our news project. And so what we will do is plan, research, write, shoot, edit, and publish a 1 to 3 minute mobile journalism news package using only our iPad. And we're going to focus on an expert in any subject that we're covering. What we would like to go out and look for is a cool character. And cool is the acronym of colorful, outgoing, opinionated, and lively. We're going to find someone who wants to be on camera and have them tell us their story. And so you have all the descriptions and the directions right there in that news package. Now, another important part of a video process or video project is to really reflect upon what we've done. There's a couple different ways you can do this. In a closed environment or a more secure environment, again, Google Docs is a great app for the student to write about the good and the bad and the ugly of the entire process, whether it was learning the video making process, whether it was they got a flat tire driving out to the scene, whether it was the person they interviewed just was kind of, you know, tense and anxiety ridden, to maybe it was the greatest experience they ever had and the person they interviewed couldn't say enough amazing things, and it was easy to edit on the iPad. They couldn't believe how easy it was to click and drag and point and click. And so it's really important, I think, to capture those thoughts, to reflect upon and critique as a class at a later point. Another option for this would be to open up maybe a Weebly or a WordPress app and actually, for older students, have them blog about this experience so that students in class or students around the world could offer comments or feedback. Kind of in a nutshell, these are the apps that we really looked into for this project, and we tried to keep it very simple. Of course, we have iMovie as our app to capture our video. The other thing you can do is to use photos, and you'll see in the example video here before we close that I used a lot of different photos as well. Photos fit into the camera roll in the iMovie app really, really well. And sometimes a photo can tell a story just as easily as the video, especially if our video turned it out a little shaky, or if we're maybe covering a subject that we can't actually capture that B-roll, but we could find photos on site through Creative Commons or doing advanced Google searches that we can find and own those photos, or maybe the expert that we talk to can offer us some photos. That would be really helpful to use in our project. Of course, then we have YouTube and Vimeo not only to do some research and look into for cinematography reasons and video tutorials, but of course that's where we'll publish our work later as well. Paper 53 for sketching and storyboarding some ideas, and then of course Google Drive and Google Apps. And in this particular case, because Vimeo and YouTube are blocked at my school, I had my students submit their videos through Google Drive, and then at a later time, when the filter was turned off, we would have them upload those videos to the web. I'd like to end, Mike, by showing you the example video that I took. I had a wonderful opportunity, and you had a chance to be there as well, to go to San Diego with the Apple Distinguished Educator community. And the project I decided to do when I got this brainstorm was to shoot all of my video footage on my iPad and my iPhone. I also shared some of that footage via AirDrop, just to kind of see if I wanted to have multiple students collaborate on a project. They each could be shooting at different times in different subjects or different areas of our project, and they can share that footage via AirDrop, which was another great idea. So I decided to pick this expert, who is a scientist, and was going to talk to us about the gold-spotted oak borer, which was basically a beetle that was killing trees in San Diego County. Along the way, what I also identified was that there was one member of our group who really was interested in this content, and she really kind of started to follow our expert, and I thought she would be an excellent reactionary or supporting character to the story. And so what you'll see in this video is a good mix of photos and video, not only talking about the facts of this story and how these beetles were negatively impacting the trees in San Diego County, but I also wanted to kind of branch out and have a larger message that I hope comes across towards the end.
We are expecting this summer a higher level of mortality in the oak trees. We're having a drought right now throughout the state, and then this is our dry period of the year, our very dry period of the year anyway. One of the projects that I work on is the invasive species, the gold-spotted oak borer, which is a beetle that was brought here from southern Arizona probably in the mid-90s, and it's having a catastrophic effect on the oak trees in San Diego County. And so what we're trying to do is find the best solution to deal with it. To date, it's thought that the beetle has killed in excess of 100,000 oak trees throughout the county, but within a very confined area in the eastern and central parts of the county. So working with multiple different agencies, our big mantra is to keep the infected area as is and don't let it spread anymore. I think it's important because the natural land has such an effect on us, even if we don't realize it, and to keep it in as natural a state as possible, I think is ideal. It allows us to experience just sights and sounds that we don't get to experience if we spend a lot of time either in the house or in the city. So just allowing people a place to explore and enjoy.
So we stopped and we listened to an environmental scientist at Cuyamaca Rancho State Park, and he was talking about a specific beetle that was brought in from Arizona that I thought it was really interesting that in Arizona, because they get a lot of water, that the water in the trees and the beetle, they kind of coexist naturally, but when they were brought into an area in California where there's a lot of drought, that the tree cannot sustain the beetle because the tree itself is already fighting for water, and then the beetle is taking away those resources. He was showing us the different types of trees that are in that area and taught us how to identify the different trees, and he also taught us how to look for where the beetles come out of the trees.
Being outside is huge for me. I've got to be able to just have my feet on the ground and be able to just see the outdoors every day, and this allows me to do it. And this is what I did growing up as a kid, just running around the woods. And so now I get paid for it. And I get to meet a lot of just really smart people and just learn from them, and just make my impact and my impression on the natural world, and just leave it better than what I found it as.
I loved it. I love fresh air. I love hearing the wind in the trees. I love anything with hills. And Ranger Mike was very knowledgeable.
If you're in the city and you've got urban parks, utilize them. If you got the opportunity to get out to the country somewhere, do it. Even if you live in rural areas, I know a lot of kids and families that don't utilize what they have in their backyard and stuff. So get outside and enjoy it.
Just a couple of side notes on that, Mike, that I only took about 4 minutes or less of raw footage of my expert interview. I had less than 3 minutes of interview with my supporting character, Jennifer, there. And basically just by offering some tell me conversation starters. The video I shot and the photos I took me about 15 or 20 minutes. And then ultimately it only took me about an hour to edit on the iPad within iMovie. Now, of course, I'm adept as far as video production, but I had never edited a video within iMovie. So I really think this is a tangible video project that really any class, any student, any teacher could really potentially offer. Let me cut back here and stop sharing the screen. And so I'm just really excited about this project and having really any kind of class take advantage of it, maybe find an opportunity to use it, and hopefully they'll see that there's some media literacy lessons that are kind of embedded in it. But really, more than anything else, even if the video doesn't turn out the way that the student really hoped that it would, the whole process of learning these skills, having an opportunity to meet an expert, enhancing some writing skills and publishing skills are really going to ultimately be very valuable. Potentially to a presentation model for any class, and that's really my hope and my goal.
Absolutely, Don. I think you got a great resource here for people, and I think you're right that mobile journalism fits in just about any subject area or any grade level. And I know that you're kind of, with how you've geared this, you've said you've kind of targeted more of a secondary level. But I think that same concepts could be applied to any grade level, K-12, and certainly beyond that. Even teachers in trying to communicate with their lessons and so on. And I think it's a great example of how to really leverage the iPad, right? And you don't have a lot of a lot of investment here in terms of software. Most of what you have is free or very low cost, and then certainly if you have the device, you've given them a path and some tools to get started with it. So thank you so much for being on, Don. I think this is a great resource. We'll link to certainly the course so people can subscribe, and they'll have all of your contact information. So if they want to reach out, they can touch base with you directly on following up from there and going from there. But this has been great. So thank you again for your time and expertise. And I will be back next month with another guest presenter to talk about a great topic here for the Apatic audience. Thank you very much. We'll see you around.